Okay, Commissioners, audience, if you please take your seat, I'd like to call the Government Operations meeting to order. Our first item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 3 is adoption of the agenda, and we're going to add to the item 7B, update of the Sterling Heights mid-lawsuit from our Corp Counsel, John Schapka. We're going to add that. Other than that, any questions on the agenda? If not, we need a motion. Moved by Sauger, supported by Romano, and please vote. Motion passes. Item number 4, approval of the minutes. There are none, so we'll skip that. Public participation. Anyone from the public wish to address this body? Okay, seeing no one from the public, go on to item number 6A, appointment, Solid Waste Planning Committee. 11 vacancies, two-year terms. They expire May 31st, 2019. These are appointments that are recommended by the Executive's Office. I see Mr. Lorenzo here. Hello, Al. And I believe we have 3 people attending right now. And we'll start with the first one who is here today, Mr. Frederick Thompson. Fred, if you want to come up to the podium, you have to push the red button in the middle to speak, and just tell us a little bit about yourself, and that you understand the terms of this office. And
please, I'm Frederick Thompson. I am the owner and one of the partners and the president of Indian Summer Recycling. We handle somewhere between 40 and 70,000 tons of yard waste material each year. We convert it into a compost, which is then sold through various outlets, including Hypenex, where it's bagged for Scott's Fertilizer, and for a number of the local landscape contractors. We have been operating Indian Summer for 25 years, and I have been intimately involved in the development of the waste industry in Macomb County. It went from an awful lot of independent contractors to a couple majors, that got bought out by other miners, who then got bought out by another major. So I've seen it, I understand it, and I'm looking forward to my 3rd term.
very good. Any commissioners have any questions for Fred? Commissioner Brown?
Thank you for your service. What has been your experience on the commission over 3 terms? Explain the activity.
The first term was interesting because we actually had we started to redo the solid waste plan. We had a couple of people who wanted to allow the export of the garbage out of the state, but in the end, not a tremendous amount of work got done. The last term, which is just ending, we had an introductory meeting, and we had no meetings after that. The interesting part is I was involved in the redrafting the solid waste legislation in Lansing, all the way through the composting and recycling. And I was involved in the work groups that dealt with the compost. And there's going to be some interesting things coming through the Solid Waste Planning Commission now, because they're proposing a number of items that I'm not so sure, as a resident of Macomb County, I'd be real happy to see, let alone as a composter. But
Such as, what are those items?
well, one of them is they're going to try and make composting sites, if the county doesn't have a sufficient capacity, then they're talking about the state being able to force a composting site on a community. And I just don't, we are the composting facility that didn't cause any trouble. Okay, we didn't, we just quietly go about our business, and our neighbors like us. But I don't see, I mean, we are prevented from expanding. But after what some of these communities went through, I can understand it. And I don't see this part being forced on. I think the other part that's going to be interesting is they're talking about removing the ban around the restrictions between garbage going between the various communities. And so there will be no more limits on what Macomb can take in or send out, as with the other ones. And that's going to cause, they figured 3 or 4 landfills to be shut down or to go out of business because of the lack of the material. So it's, and they're doing an A to Z rewrite of the solid waste laws. And they're talking about the solid waste plans having to come back and do one every 5 years. There's a number of things that I think are going to be real interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they make sausage.
So you're friends, you basically want to keep the status quo then? You
No,
don't want
I
to see
didn't
any
say that.
changes?
I was a big proponent that the compost industry needed reasonable regulations, and they needed to pay reasonable amount of fees, because they told me I couldn't call it taxes, reasonable amount of fees to ensure that those rules and regulations got enforced. Because so much of what happened, as we know, was that there was no ability for the state to intervene, and there was no money for the state to intervene. And so some rogue operators got to operate much longer than I thought that they should have. So I'm a big proponent of that.
'Cause I think Macomb County, our solid waste management plan lacks a composting component because it's caused nothing but problems from some of those rogue contractors you're concerned about, because they pop up here or there.
We've
And I think
handled-
we have well within our ability to manage that properly if there was a will on the part of the solid waste planning committee to actually do it.
Okay,
And,
we have handled Macomb's material since 1990.
well, you didn't handle all of it. You can't handle all of it, can you?
We'll find out this year, but in general, no. And I'm looking forward to another site.
So you probably don't want to see any expansion of any composting facility, because that would affect your business then, right?
No, because there's enough for everyone.
I agree with
but
that. I agree with that.
Okay, so the question is how we expand it. And you can't do it willy-nilly. It's the north end of the county needs the Shelby area, the Washington. They need a facility up there. And it doesn't have to be that big. But again, all of this is coming to bear. And how we manage it will be interesting.
Well, one time Pine Tree Acres wanted to expand their landfill, and this board, through a close vote, denied them the ability to do that. But I'm sure that'd be an area that would be open to expand that facility and let the compost go there. They'd be probably, we've got plenty of capacity out there. Don't have to worry about siting a new site. We've got plenty of ground out there.
One of the
And,
problems with that,
yes.
because I've worked real closely with waste management all along, and I can't come up with all the letters, but it's the stormwater discharge permits. And putting compost on their facility there would severely strain their stormwater discharge permit, which is why they haven't really done it to date. I mean, at one time, 90% of my business came through waste management, and my site is less than 2 miles from Pine Tree. So, I mean, as I say, it's going to be interesting, and I hope I'm appointed to the board, because I think I bring historical knowledge to it.
Well, I appreciate your service and your experience, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Next is, not yet, Fred, we still have another question. Chair Bob Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, how are you? Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
I have some questions, not necessarily for you as far as your reappointment, but when we talk about composting and solid waste, I mean, I'm not sure if everybody here is really clear on do you guys deal with actual composting on the solid waste? 'Cause I remember for a while they were trying to get us to open up the agreement and add composting in, and then I kept hearing that composting wasn't part of our deal here. I'm really not sure where you guys are as far as overseeing composting in the county. And then I have another question
First,
from that.
in the 2000 solid waste plan, Indian Summer is acknowledged as a composting facility
Okay.
that can handle the Macomb County material. You know, when King of the Winds was operating, we were probably splitting it, and we were probably doing 35,000 yards of yard waste compost.
Right.
We have not done the food waste. We have not said we wouldn't, we just haven't encouraged it, and we have not done any. But we actually, on our 30-acre parcel, we turn that yard waste into a finished compost, which is then actually works remarkably well, more than I would have imagined when I started.
Okay, so all of the Macomb County compost actually can be handled there still? That's what I'm,
For the time being,
okay.
we will do it.
So,
We need to, there were other sites up by 69, and there's a couple of them that have opened and closed, or opened and that are operating, but it's the safety valve.
okay, and then my question really is about St. Clair County, because I know they have a composting organization. I mean, they have something there where they're actually generating their own methane. They're looking for compost, from what I understand. Do you guys deal with them at all on this? Would they?
See, the compost is prohibited from the landfills. In 1990, I'll go back and tell you, there was a barge floating around New York, looking for a barge of material, looking for a home. It floated and floated, and it didn't find one. It actually landed in 2006. But there was a perceived notion that the landfills were filling up and that nobody wanted to site a landfill. And my partners and I decided, that there was no reason for yard waste to be in a landfill. And 20% of a residential curb is compost. So we opened this composting facility. Shortly thereafter, the state of Michigan said, yeah, good idea. No more can you burn or bury yard waste. And what you're finding is that so much has been drawn between recycling and composting, so much has been drawn from the landfills that they're actually financially hurting and are looking for more material. And so the idea is that degrading material can make methane, methane can make gas, and make electricity. Pine Tree hasn't had compost there since basically 1995, has not in there. And they have a major gasification system. They've been operating the electricity for the GM plant in Orion from the landfill that's there, and Ford Motors got one in Dearborn that they get it from. There's plenty of methane. But that's, those are the things that, great sound bites, but aren't necessarily true. I mean,
That's fine. You've answered. I don't want to keep you here on.
No. I just,
you can if you want, but.
No. I enjoy talking about it.
Good. I can tell.
But
no, I like it though. It's good for us to understand that, which is great.
And I'll tell you what. I think one of the things I'd like to do is offer an invitation to everybody to come out to our facility. We'll give you a tour, and then I'll take you to lunch if you'll go, and we can set that up. Just make sure it's not raining, because we make dirt, and when it rains, we make mud, and it's not a real fun place to be.
Great. Thanks, Fred.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kleinfeld, questions for Fred? Sorry.
I'm going to pass. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Fred? Okay, Fred, thanks for coming here today, and I believe the vote on this will be at Thursday's full board meeting. Thank you for coming here today. Next is Patrick Grieve, representing Waste Management. Hello, Pat, how are you?
Good afternoon. I am fine, thank you, members of the board and Mr. Chairman. As stated, my name is Patrick Grieve. I am the Public Sector Services Manager for Waste Management. My territory covers Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana. Proudly have served on your Solid Waste Committee. I think this will be, if I am reappointed, and I would like to be, so I ask that you consider doing that, but I think this will be my third term. I joined the committee right after, I think, the last plan, or sometime after the last plan was completed, and we haven't had a lot of activity, and I won't repeat everything that Fred relayed. It was pretty accurate chronology of the things we did In the last term, there was a little bit of activity with, import and export of waste, but really the whole matter just kind of died on the vine as time went on, so we never took any action or sent anything up to the board. In terms of my background, I've been with Waste Management for about 10 years. It'll be 10 years in August. Prior to that, I worked in the consulting industry, specifically engaged with brownfield redevelopment and the startup of brownfield authorities here throughout the state of Michigan. Spent some time even here with Steve Casson when helping out the county as that all came to pass in 1998 and beyond, with getting the authority set up and working with the local governments on that. Prior to that, I worked in local government in the capacity of city administration. My professional training is also in public administration, so I've got a little bit of a combination of some public policy experience from my past life in the public sector, as well as now waste industry experience from this role with waste management. So again, would be more than pleased to serve on the board. I fill one of the positions that is reserved for quote-unquote industry professionals as prescribed by the state statute. So again, would be happy to serve in that role, would be pleased to serve the citizens of the county and this board. I think, echoing a little bit of what Fred said, as a rewrite Part 115, as he was speaking of, if that passes here in the next term, probably the committee is going to be more active in terms of how that legislation then translates down to what do we have to do with the solid waste plan. And just to sort of summarize all of it up, if that legislation goes through as is, it is going to push some of those decisions down to this level, to the local level, which I think is the right place for it. And, that may necessitate some changes to the plan and some looks at the plan to incorporate different things related to solid waste, recycling, and yard waste. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Okay, wonderful. Commissioner Romano?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple statements. I've known Mr. Greavy here for a few years. He's handled Sterling Heights as waste management. And Mr. Greavy's always been my go-to guy if there was any situations, and those were very few and far between. But I've always found him to be a complete and total guy as far as any help that we needed. And if it was up to me just to recommend him, I'd approve him today. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? If not, I'd just like to ask a couple questions.
Sure, please.
Pine Tree Acres, that's owned by Waste Management,
That's
right?
correct.
Okay. Could you maybe just give us a little bit of a history, just more so for some of the new commissioners, how that works into being Waste Management owning Pine Tree Acres? And I can recall it was very political in the state legislature, I think in the late 90s, early 2000s. Some of the local elected officials around Macomb County were very outspoken on Canadian trash coming to pine trees. So I was wondering if you could just comment on that a little bit, or give the board as a whole some history on that.
Sure, I'll do the best that I can. So the facility, as you know, is located in Lenox Township. They are our host community. We have with them what's called a host community agreement, which allows the site to be cited in their community and exist there. And it's been there for a long time. I don't know exactly how many years, but quite a while. As you stated, that issue, not only Pine Tree Acres, but throughout the state, sort of rose to the level of getting quite a bit of attention a few decades back when there was a good amount of material coming across from Canada to the United States. And so literally it was most of the disposal facilities, including Pine Tree Acre, within a certain radius of where that waste was generated in Canada. Fast forward to today, if you looked at the history of it and the volume, the waste stream has changed. As Fred was saying, it's been parsed more by recycling and composting. It goes to different facilities now. There's waste processing centers. There's a lot of different technology coming to pass for dealing with solid waste and specifically reuse of solid waste. And as that has happened, the market has kind of dictated that waste go elsewhere. So if you look at the trend, the volume that comes in to Pine Tree Acres and the other facilities from Canada is greatly reduced from what it used to be back when that was an issue that was kind of at the forefront. I won't kid you, we still take waste from Canada, as do other facilities throughout the state. But the market and the technology and the availability of disposal facilities kind of drives that and where it goes, because you've got to pay to transport it, and there, becomes a point when it doesn't make sense to bring it here, or how far and why it goes.
Right.
I hope that answers the question a little bit.
One final question. At the rate of trash that Pine Tree Acres is getting, when will that be filled up to maximum capacity?
That's a really tough question to answer. I mean, it doesn't have an exact finite life, because, as you said, it does depend on the volume that comes in, and there's kind of peaks and valleys in that volume. But, there are literally years of capacity left at that facility.
About 20 years?
Right near.
You would say?
I don't know if it's 20.
Okay.
I don't know if it's 15. Again, it would depend on the volume, but
Because I remember 10 years ago.
it's not like 2 or 3.
Yeah,
So-
I remember about a decade ago, they guesstimated what it would be, and it sounds like from you two gentlemen that there's less trash going there because of all this recycling.
Well,
So maybe that might extend it a little bit.
you're on the right track. I mean, it's dependent on the volume.
Okay.
And it's, the volume in 2008, when a lot of things happened to the economy, you saw volume take a big dip at that point. And so, that increased capacity and years of life, if you will, at our facility as well as many others. So it's just kind of cyclical. We're on a trend that's coming up now again in terms of volume, and that includes, refuse, recycling, and yard waste, just because the economy is changing and so is the volume of waste. But again, there's a lot of things that impact that volume. There's a lot of new technology for processing waste that's also coming to market. So,
Okay, very good. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for coming here today. Final vote on this will be Thursday, and thanks for coming in.
all right, you're welcome. Thanks
Thank you.
for your consideration.
And then finally on the list, Commissioner Sauger, who is present. Commissioner Sauger, do you have any words on the Solid Waste Committee?
It's an intelligent board. They're really sharp. They make me look good. And I'll tell you, you gotta go up there, and you have to go up and see the compost site. Don't plan on having lunch there, because you can't have lunch there, but elsewhere. And it's a beautiful site, and it's doing its job. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sauger. With that, that will conclude that portion of the agenda, Solid Waste Planning Committee. We'll go on to item number B, the Huron-Clinton Metropolitan Authority. One vacancy, a 6-year term to expire in 2023. And it's John Paul Reyes here, and he's being appointed by the Executive's Office. He thinks he is? Okay.
To be
John, how are
determined.
you? You doing good?
Afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
How are we doing this afternoon?
Excellent. So if you just want to give us a brief presentation about you being appointed to the HCMA and things that are, I haven't followed exactly what's been happening to HCMA in a while. Maybe give us some indication on that, what's been going on there.
Absolutely. I'm probably more shocked and surprised, as you all are, that the Executive and the Executive's Office extended the opportunity for me to be the representative to the HCMA Board. When we look at the whole notion of regional parks and regional park systems, I think the gold standard for Southeast Michigan is the Huron-Clinton Metropolitan Authority. With the ability that they've had to facilitate 3 comprehensive parks in Macomb County, starting with Lake St. Clair Metro Park, as I like to call it, Metro Beach. I think that's the East Side's Pine Knob. Also, Stony Creek, where I may or may not have spent senior skip day, and I can neither confirm nor deny those allegations at this time. And Wolcott Mill, where we have the Farm Learning Center, where my 18-month-old daughter, Amelia Grace, absolutely loves to go there. It is a fantastic deployment of not only recreational resources, but also natural resource management and conservation. In my tenure at the county, I have had the good fortune of working with not only upper-level management at the HCMA and their current director, Mr. George Pfeiffer, but also working with the park systems folks, whether it's working with Mike Lyons or Nina and their planning department. It's a fantastic group of individuals that are doing everything that they can to deploy 13 parks and maintain over 25,000 acres throughout our entire region. When we look at some of our cheap initiatives and opportunities, I think the key that we have here in Macomb County is really using at these parks as major destinations. They generate tens of thousands of trips every single year here to Macomb County, and these jewels are integrated into our larger parks, recreation, natural resources strategy. Whether it's using them for Bassmasters Elite Series fishing tournaments, which have people come in all over the nation, or hosting everything from a local family reunion to a 5K. It is just fantastic to know that these parks and the people that work there are here to support us on a number of different fronts. Selfishly, I think we can learn a lot from the HCMA. Last week, we had the opportunity to discuss not only a number of the program areas in my department, but a number of future opportunities associated with parks and natural resources. And I think having a regional asset like HCMA in the room is not only going to help us refine that, but more importantly, help us learn how we can fill any gaps in that system. It's something that I not only am willing to learn as a board representative, but also do the best that I can to communicate what are some of those key objectives and also be a voice for getting some of those resources here to our county too. So more than anything, I'm here to have a conversation with you all about how this potentially might move forward and see if there's an opportunity to serve on board on behalf of the county. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I don't have any Commissioner Brown?
Yes, thank you. They've had management issues over there the last several years. Mr. Pfeiffer is now the director there. He was formerly the superintendent of law enforcement, wasn't he?
Yes, sir.
And so, how involved have you been with the park system prior to, the appointment? I mean, are you gonna have enough time? You've got a busy job right now. I mean, basically, I see you all over the place.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're my go-to. I call you all the time for things out of the weekend sometimes. So,
That's true. I have a lot of free time, so that's why this board's popping
How
up.
much are you gonna be able to, so it's a big commitment. I mean, there's some time in roaming across. It's nice when they're the metro parks we go to here in our county, but when they're, on the other side of the Oakland County or downriver, it's a problem. So, I mean, what do you think about that?
Very, very much so. I've had a conversation with this not only with Mr. Pfeiffer as far as board commitments go, also discussing it in depth with the county executive's office. The fantastic thing is that within my department, I have a great support network, not only through our deputy director, Vicki Redd, and our managerial staff that was here today, but I feel that not only would I be able to fulfill the board commitment as far as the meetings, but be also to leverage the position that I have as director to explore other opportunities to connect into some other programmatic elements from both our Land and Water Resources Division and our Planning Mapping Division too.
Would you be willing to come into the board at least once a year to give us an update of what's going on over there in terms of operations, the budgets, and so we haven't had that interaction with our county representative in some time.
In coordination with the Office of the County Executive, I'd be more than happy to provide that information to the board.
Yeah, okay. They've had some financial issues with, like all public bodies, their revenues have been down like ours, and they've got a big infrastructure to support. You'll be added value to them. Certainly, that board will be. You'll know a lot of where to go for some help on some of these issues.
I appreciate that.
One of the issues that was discussed was Wolcott Mill and trying to partner with Macomb Community College and MSU Extension to develop that into truly a learning park, and less as a recreational tourism operation, and help lessen the financial burden to the HCMA, as well as create an additional value to our local residents for a variety of agricultural education opportunities. Are you open to those type of dramatic options?
Not only am I open, I think it's imperative. Agriculture is the second largest industry of the state of Michigan, and we have an asset of the Farm Learning Center right here in Macomb County. Not only to be an incubator for a lot of that creativity, the livestock opportunities that they have up there is absolutely fantastic with the diversity of not only dairy cows, but also horse species. But I think the other fantastic thing there is how we work that into other type of service-based organizations, whether it's Future Farmers of America or connect that into our local school districts for farm learning experiences too.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck. You'll do good over there.
Appreciate it.
No doubt about it. I'm glad you're there.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. John, can I just ask you a question? I don't know if you know this or not. That's why I'm going to ask you. The financing for the HCME, and again, this is for some of the new commissioners, part of it is financed through property taxes, and then obviously the other part of it being finances when you go through the gate or you buy a yearly pass, annual pass, or daily pass. Can you talk about that? I don't know what type of financial problems they have.
Here's the fascinating thing about the HCMA. They have had the same millage system in place for their area since 1941. It includes Macomb, Oakland, Wayne, Livingston, and Washtenaw counties. That area was selected because in the name it takes the Huron watershed and the Clinton watershed, so it covers both of those watershed areas and connects all those individuals in those areas. So it's a pretty fascinating practice where if you're going out for a millage, make sure it's forever because you really don't have to worry about that.
Thank you. Commissioner Drollet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The millage has been in place since 1941.
Yes, sir.
Wow. I wonder what the growth has been in revenues as a result of the growth in the county, since it must be extraordinary.
I'm not an expert in that field, but I could obtain that information.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I mean, other than the dip and the Great Recession, just the growth in the county and the growth in property values must have created a quite substantial inflow of resources. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? Okay, seeing none, thanks for coming here, John, and this will be voted on at Thursday's full board.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Item number 7A, resolution opposing the construction of a nuclear waste repository in the Great Lakes Basin. Need a motion by that. Moved by Kleinfeld, supported by Carabelli. Did I see your hand? To support this, is that okay? Okay, did you support this, Commissioner?
I made the motion.
Okay, do we have support for that? Supported by Commissioner Kraft. Any questions on this, Commissioners? Seeing none, Commissioner Kleinfeld?
Just one, and that is, at the end, just the wording of where it says, now therefore be it resolved that the Macomb County Board of Commissioners, Michigan, in order to protect. I don't know if we can say the Macomb County, Michigan Board of Commissioners, but it's just off, that's all, if we can fix that. But if we can't, I'm not going to sweat over it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Brown?
On the subject, the delegation, once again, since it's a new session of Congress, all things died in the last session. The congressional delegation bipartisanly wrote a letter to the current president, President Trump, and called on them to work with the Canadian government to make this landfill or this Canadian repository not happen. And so this will support what we're doing in Washington with our congressional delegation as well, trying to get the administration, like the prior administration, to get the Canadian government to cease and desist. So that's a good resolution. I support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Any other speakers? Commissioner Drollet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is perhaps a bit technical, and I'm not sure if anyone here can answer it, but where it says, now therefore be resolved, it says that we would oppose a facility of this nature to be constructed in the Great Lakes Basin. I recognize the proposal that we're concerned about immediately is located about 1 kilometer from the lake. But isn't the basin like the entire Midwest? Does anybody know how far the basin extends?
I don't think so, unless there's an expert here.
Yeah, that was.
I didn't hear that.
Okay, south of Nova Scotia. Okay, I mean, it just seems to me that the Great Lakes Basin is a very large area, and that we don't want to bury our nuclear waste anywhere within 11 states and 5 provinces. But I get it. But I think our biggest concern is putting it a mile from the shoreline. But I recognize it's probably not a question that any of us here have enough geographical knowledge, including myself, to.
Look at a map of Canada and go, where else could they put it? It's not so close to water. They got plenty of options.
Well, then you're in the Atlantic Coast Basin, the Pacific Basin, the Mississippi Basin. Right.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Drollet. Any other questions, commissioners? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. Passes 12-0. Item number 7B is an update on the Sterling Heights Mid lawsuit from our Corp Counsel, John Schapka. Good afternoon, John.
Good afternoon, Chair. This is a brief update on the litigation, which does not directly concern the county. At this point, we're not a litigant. The claims are not directed immediately toward the county, so we can discuss this in public. Anything I state will be from the public record. If I think there's anything that's inside baseball, meaning privileged within the county government structure, I'll just forego commenting on it. Approximately 10 days ago, the city of Sterling Heights filed a civil action against the MID, the Macomb Interceptor Drainage District. Unfortunately, this is going to get all kind of technical. But the two-count complaint asked the court to do two things. First, Sterling Heights wanted the court, the 16th Circuit Court, to take superintending control over the MID board. Second, Sterling Heights wanted the court to order, through a mandamus action, the MID board to sue the county of Macomb for breach of contract, maintenance type contract, concerning the 15-mile interceptor which failed at Christmas time, just before Christmas. Very interesting claims, very interesting avenues that Sterling Heights took. Very interesting reasoning underlying their action, and quite frankly, I can't fathom what they were doing. This morning there was a hearing, a motion hearing filed by the MID board attorneys. The MID is separate from the county, that's why we're not involved directly yet. The MID board attorneys argued for dismissal of count 1 of that complaint. Count 1 was the superintending control by the court. Superintending control by a local circuit court is permissible under the drain code. The circuit court is, for lack of better terms, the appellate authority over the drain board. The statute provides circuit court very narrow authorities, and I mean very narrow authorities over the board's decision-making. The MID attorneys argued, I think very, very effectively, that the narrow circumstances simply were not present in this current effort. I'm trying to think of how bookish to get with this. The circumstances over which a circuit court can take control over a drain board's decision-making run to fraud, gross misconduct, or simply not following statutory apportionment formulas. The formulas for apportioning are set by statute. Here, Sterling Heights was complaining, or at least on its face complained, the MID board's apportionment of the cost of repairing the sinkhole was unfair because, and this is where their logic fell apart, they actually didn't take issue with the apportionment formula. They took issue over whether the repair costs should be assessed in the first place, sort of the foundation underlying the apportionment. And they argued that the MID board should not assess the repair costs to anyone, including and especially them, because there was a breach of contract between the county and the MID board, the maintenance contract for the MID interceptor. Very interesting, because it actually would require full adjudication of the question of whether there was a breach, whether the breach actually caused this failure. You have to adjudicate that before you can discuss mandamus, setting aside right now the impossibility of mandamus remedy, because mandamus is proper only where the government action is absolutely required by statute. Whether to pursue a breach of contract action is not mandated by any statute. It's a discretionary matter. But you have to resolve the mandamus issue before you could resolve the superintending control issue. It was like backwards engineering. The court had very little problem. In fact, within about 30 seconds of ending all arguments on the issue, the court granted the motion dismissing count 1 of Sterling Heights' complaint. Count 1, again, is just the superintending control. The mandamus issue is still there. It still lies there. It will probably be there for a little bit, not years, but a month or so. The important point at this point is that the bond sale for the repair money can go forward. It was the superintending control issue that stopped the bond sale. that issue is off the table at this point. The bond sale should proceed very quickly forward.
Very good. Commissioner Brown?
So is Sterling Heights, do we know if they're going to appeal?
Appeal is real interesting. First, the circuit court is the first line of appeal. That's the appeal of right. Any appeal beyond that is a permissive appeal, so they would have to actually apply to the Court of Appeals for permission to appeal. But more interestingly, because that mandamus issue is still out there, there is no final order in the case. They would have to appeal for permission to appeal and for an interlocutory appeal, an appeal before the case is completely resolved. As a strategic matter, leaving that mandamus issue alone kind of shuts the door on an appeal until after the bond sale can go through. Could they? Yes, theoretically. For practical reasons, can they? It's not very easy, and it would be a longer term rather than an immediate appeal. It might take a few months to get there. If I was going to bet, I would bet that they don't. There's very little to be gained from it at this point.
Because once the bond sales are issued and say they actually won their appeal, how do you put the genie back in the bottle?
Precisely. Precisely.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. On the list, I have Chair Bob Smith, Kleinfeld, and Romano. Commissioner Smith.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. John, just on that appeal side of things, even though it's not likely, does the threat of it do anything to the potential bond sale? I mean, because I know there was a lot of theories about what could potentially, mess with the interest rates and the, the sale. So just the fact that they still could and still ask for, that type of, interlocutory agreement type thing. The fact that they still could appeal, is that going to hurt the chances of this, or will we know something about that soon? Do you know?
I'd be way into speculation. I have no idea what goes through the minds of financial advisors and bond sales in the bond market. Could it? Of course it could. I mean, metaphysically, anything's possible. Would it? When I talked to our finance director, he seemed very comfortable with today's ruling allowing the bond sale to go forward without any real interference.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioner Kleinfeld?
I'm not sure exactly how to ask this. The disposition of the mid-board a year ago, would that have any factor in this process?
Are you asking who was on the board a year ago with
Well,
that?
I mean,
The law isn't going to make any differentiation between who was on it then, who was on it now. It's the same board. It's a continuation of board authority, just like this board. If membership changes, the board continues as a body.
okay, I'll ask it away from the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, since I am Sterling Heights, part of my district, I understand why Sterling Heights has filed the suit. I don't think they filed it intentionally to jeopardize the bond sale. I think that's the furthest thing from their mind. I really do. I've had some discussion there. I do know that there has been some conversation between the Drain Commissioner and some of the attorneys for Sterling Heights trying to reach a compromise, and that fell apart. So I totally understand what Sterling Heights is doing, and I'm totally 100% in favor of it. I just don't think at this point that Sterling Heights is going to back down, and if they're going to appeal, and I think they will. The unfortunate part of this is that the only people that are going to make any money out of this is the attorneys, probably. But the point being that distributing that amount of money, $20 million is what we're talking about, that they want to assess to the residents of Sterling Heights. It's a lot of money, and it breaks down to somewhere between probably $50 and $70 a year for the residents for the next 30 years they're talking about. That ain't going to happen, at least not while I'm around. I'm going to try and fight that as much as I can. I understand why the suit, why they want to sue. I understand that they feel that the problem is with the Macomb County, that the check should have been done for the inspection of the interior of that, or it could have been something could have been done prior to this. Prevention could have been taken. So I hear our attorney here giving his statement. I understand where Sterling Heights is coming from, and I just want the commissioners to know where I'm coming from. So I will support Sterling Heights all the way through this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have any questions on this subject for John? Commissioner Brown?
Did the mid-board have any do the communities that make up the mid-board have any fiduciary responsibility to the actions of the Public Works Commissioner?
Do the
I mean,
communities,
yeah.
the individual 11 communities?
Yes.
Have a fiduciary responsibility
To make
for-
sure that they actually, I mean, their community's paying money into a system to provide services. If the services weren't provided, whose responsibility is to make
No,
sure that
the-
those services are being provided?
The community, I don't believe the communities have a fiduciary duty. They're just part of a contract between the community and the mid-board.
So if I contracted someone to repair my car and
Actually,
maybe they're not really
their
experienced.
contract is with something called the Macomb Wastewater Disposal District. Wastewater Disposal District contracted with MID to do the operation of the MID business functions, including maintenance and repair.
So,
It
but sir,
it
if
gets
you're
kinda
spending money
hazy.
on something, don't you have a responsibility to make sure that whatever you're paying money for is giving you what you desired?
Well, ordinarily, you do that through a contract action.
Okay, well, you sign a contract, say you're gonna provide the service and hope that it's done, and you just hope, right? You just,
Well, that's why you monitor the contract and sue if there's a breach.
but they didn't monitor the contract, that's the rub, right? They didn't monitor it, and look what happened. According to them, that, all right, thank you, Mr.
I think
Chairman.
that's the root allegation, that it wasn't monitored, it wasn't performed.
Gotta look in the mirror, I think, sometimes. Thank you.
Commissioner Carabelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple of layman questions for you, if you could bear with me. The break that's out there, the situation taking place is just down a ways from the repair that was done with the other fiasco with Ferguson and Kilpatrick and that whole gig. So I go back and I look at this and I look at things in history in the past. I can grasp a little bit what Sterling Heights is looking to do, but that's not just Sterling Heights, that's everybody has the same feel. But at the end of the day, if it's a county responsible, then it's all residents, who if they have sewer, no sewer, if they live in the district, if they don't live in the district. And again, I'm not for passing the buck along to somebody who isn't who isn't a user of it. So I'm not supporting the Sterling Heights gig, because if they have X amount of users, it is what it is, just like in every other community. My concern is this. When somebody buys a piece of land, and that piece of land found out there were some contaminants on it, they go back through history. The government's pretty good at it. They go back, in 1972, this guy had a place and they had a plating factory, and he's responsible for the cleanup, and his grandkids are, by the end of the day, they get done with them. We go back and we look, and I heard stories that this pipe, and maybe you guys are looking at all this, and this is for naught, but you know, it'd be nice to come out and say, hey, look, we did have inspections done. They showed that it was good. It missed it, whatever the deal was. I know the inspections were done where the Detroit fixed a problem. Maybe we bought a lemon. It's not a car. We can't get a lemon law on it. There's a lot of concerns that, you know, we're fixing it, but then the talk isn't about, okay, what are we doing behind the scenes to get some accountability? And it looks like maybe that's what Sterling Heights and a lot of people are asking that question. So my question to you, are there other things in the work outside of this that we're not privy to?
In terms of what? Just
In terms of
inspections,
any kind of
maintenance?
accountability from, you know, we got the system, there's a problem with it. Can't return it, we got it, but is there any help we can get from that part of it? We got the system, I think there's some people in jail because of the scenario, okay, from the Detroit side on the last repair. Inspections were done. Is there accountability with the company that we hired for the inspections? People say the former drain commissioner is a response. My question is that there's litigation, there's things going on, but on our end, on the drain office end, on the county's end, we got to go forward, we got to fix the problem. I think everybody agrees that has to be done, and we got to go forward. But what else is happening besides us going forward defending this? Is there something else they're still looking into deeply to see if there's any accountability?
That I don't know. I don't have an answer to that right now. This is drain district business. It's the commissioner's business under the prior commissioner. No one knew what was going on over there. The current commissioner, we have much more transparency, but they're also playing catch-up, and they've been hit with this disaster on day one, which has taken most of their attention and time.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Romano. Did you want to speak on the second round?
If I may?
Please.
Just one question, if I may, Counselor. Is there any liability insurance on the drain commissioner's end or the county's end that would cover this non-inspection of the, you know what I'm looking for? I'm looking for money. Is there anything under the, that the county has insurance, liability insurance, in case something did go wrong?
County does have liability insurance. It would not even remotely approach the total bill involved here.
So you have a number?
5 million tops.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other questions, Commissioner Sauger?
There's just one quick question with a yes or no. With this litigation going on or appeal, is that going to stall the project?
Unless the litigation is going to stall anything, they've run out of money, that will stall it. Unless the bond is sold, they will have no cash to continue the project.
So there won't be any work done there while this is going on?
Not while it's going on. Right now, the bond sale can go forward.
Bond's dead. So whatever money they got,
The bond sale is moving forward.
It's going forward. The bonds
Okay.
will be sold, we
So-
expect within a week, maybe 10 days at the outside.
okay, thank you.
Sure, go ahead.
John, I have one last question. It's regarding the $20 million that we pledged to loan. We have already given 8,000. I know that there was a recommendation basically that we hold off on that last 12 that is really due and owed to a lot of the contractors already. Did today's decision obviously have an impact on us releasing that last $12 million to this project yet, or do you know what?
I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for that. That would be something Steve Smeagol would be on top of.
Okay.
I don't think yesterday, today, or tomorrow really changes the county's commitment to forward that money or loan the money to the drain district.
They put a hold on that last 12.
It does have a lot of effect on the drain district's ability to repay the money.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Drollet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, what's upsetting, I think, to all of us, that the people who are going to end up having to pay for this very expensive situation are the citizens who are, you know, not in a position to be able to oversee and be responsible for the deficiencies in the drain. Is there any process that the county could, under some circumstances, pursue civil recovery against either companies or individuals who may be personally responsible for this this disaster?
Pursuing the companies, the contractors that originally built this, no, statute of limitations ran decades ago. Pursuing those responsible for inspecting it, we're assuming somebody did inspect it. You know,
Or those who should have
inspected.
inspected it or been directed it to be inspected? Is there?
We're assuming somebody was directed or that somebody did inspect it.
Or didn't direct it to be inspected?
Now, we've got a lot of moving parts here. Let's assume a contractor was retained, paid to inspect it and didn't do it. Could we pursue them? Of course.
Okay.
What would we get? Probably the extent of the contractor's assets, which may not be much. Let's assume they did the inspection and they just did a shoddy job. Could we pursue that? Yes, we could. That's assuming that those two scenarios happened. If no one pursued inspection, there's no one to pursue.
What if somebody was responsible for ensuring that the inspections were done and didn't
Well,
do
ultimately,
that?
I think the mid-board, as it was composed back then, had that responsibility. Or the Macomb.
I realize pursuing individuals who may have been negligent is unlikely to result in some substantial amount of money to offset this enormous cost, but it may provide some sense of justice for the citizens of Macomb County.
It may provide a sense of justice. I agree it would not realize any proceeds to defray the cost of repair. It would probably cost far more than you'd ever recover just hiring lawyers to pursue these people.
Thank you.
Commissioner Toko?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John, how, this board pledged its full faith and credit to the sale of the bonds. How does this pending litigation affect that, or is there anything that we need to be concerned about or look into on that issue?
As of yesterday, I would have said, yes, there's something to be concerned about. The full faith and credit pledge was advanced based on all 11 communities being able to essentially repay the bond debt. If one of those communities pulls out, Sterling Heights, and Sterling Heights was a 1/3 user of the system, therefore would be apportioned to 1/3 of the repayment. If they pull out, the other remaining 10 communities can't bear the weight of that portion that's not going to be repaid. That would fall directly on the county under the full faith and credit pledge. So yesterday I would have said, yes, there's something very serious to be considered here. As of this morning at about 10:30, 10:45, with the judge's ruling, knowing that the bond sale can go forward, I would say, no, there's nothing to be concerned about now.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other speakers for Mr. Schapka? Okay, with that, we'll close that portion of the agenda. Move on to item number 8. We need a motion to go into closed session for pending litigation, moved by Commissioner Drollet, supported by Commissioner Lucido. We'll take a vote on the, we have to vote on that for closed session.
No, there's proclamation.
And Commissioner Lucido, if you'll clear the room. Okay. Item number 9, proclamations. We need a motion in its entirety, moved by Drollet, supported by Kleinfeld. In their entirety, A through F, please vote. Item passes. Item number 10, correspondence, DIA in Macomb County. We need a receive and file on that. Moved by Sauger, supported by Lucido. Need to vote on this. Well, I'm looking at different people. Item passes. Item number 11, new business, commissioners. Any new business? Commissioner Sauger?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to, those that are mothers on this board, I hope you had a great day yesterday. We neglected to wish you a happy Mother's Day on Friday because everybody wanted to get the hell out of here. But I hope you had a nice day, all yous. Secondly is, I'd like to have you find out what is going to happen to that property at Walcott Mills where the golf course was, because they closed it up. So I'm just curious what's going to go there. And there was one more. No, it's okay. I got it. I'm all set.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kleinfeld?
Oh, yeah. I represented the county at the Police Memorial Day last Monday and got a nice letter back from them thanking the board for the resolution. So thank you.
Very good.
And I did a good job. Thank you.
Commissioner Kleinfeld? Okay. Any other commissioners for new business? Seeing none, public participation. Seeing no one from the public, meeting is adjourned.